kanaka. I kai palaua e wana I haili kare muki ki o nā manu. Holo noa e wai o lama me ka wailapo. I ho kai me wailo pa I ke kula o hanakahi. A kai kamana o a ke aloha I noho aloha I moku ola. I ola e nā kini e, I ola e nā kini e.
Kaulana mai nei o hilo e a, ka ua kani le hua e a.
Ka ua o mulu ili e a, ka ili o ka malihini e a.
Kaulana mai nei o hilo e a, ka ua kani le hua e a.
Ka ua o mulu ili e a, ka ili o ka malihini e a.
Nani male ho I ka ikena e a, ka nani o waia ke a e a. Ka mai o lama e a, ma lama lama a mai I e a.
Nani wale ho I ka ikena e a.
Ka nani o waia ke a e a.
Ka wai o wai o lama e a. Ma lama lama
Mai I e a.
ai ai I rohona.
No I moku ola e a, he moku au I ke kai e a.
E o pulili nei e a,
Ka hune hune kai e a. Ko lana hoi moku ole ia, he moku au I ke kai e a.
e ho o puluili nei e a, ka hune hune kai e a.
Leana I ka leitani e a.
Ka pua o ka lehua e a.
Haina mai ka puana e a.
No ka ua kani lehua e a. Leana I ka leilani e a. Ka pua o ka lehua e a.
Aina mai ka puana e a, no ka ua kani le hua e a. No ka ua kani le hua e a.
No ka ua kani le hua e a.
O ku kaula ka veki o ka mauna he mauna ki e ihilani e. He makana o ka lani poha i ke aloha iho i ke akua e he i mana. E ulua e i ka pono e ho i ka malia o kulani e. Ano ai me ke aloha kako. Welcome, good to see you all. I'm very excited to be here for System Design Team meeting number 3. Ano ai me ke aloha. Can we all unmute ourselves and say aloha?
Aloha.
Good morning, aloha. Good to see you all. Is anyone here, someone who was not here in previous meeting settings? Aloha, Tiffany Kakalia. Good morning. So Tiffany Kakalia is anti-Tiffany to me, but most likely not anti-Tiffany to you. So I think she goes by maybe Tiff or Tiffany. Good to have you. And so she is the newest member of our team, and she is so instrumental in supporting the work that I do. And she's also helping with some outreach work as we reach into underserved communities like the kupuna and unhoused individuals. So we're working together to get in touch with those folks and get their mana'o on some of the work that we're doing. But welcome. Kimberly Collins, are you new here? I think we might have
I
seen you.
came to the face-to-face meeting, but not the previous Zoom meeting.
Awesome. Can you share a little bit about where you're joining in from?
Sure, I'm the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Hawaii Community College, and I heard last week that you're a former student.
I absolutely am.
I was talking to Drew, and he had
Oh my
wonderful things to say
gosh.
about you.
Oh my gosh, everything, there are a few people that I say that everything I am is because of these people. My auntie Tiff is one of those people. Andrew is another one of those people. So I love that you are coming into this space as a beloved from Hawaii Community College. Welcome. And just looking forward to all the work that we get to do together. Have you had a chance to read through the pre-read materials?
Yes.
Are you? Oh, okay, awesome, cool. So, you know a little bit about how the system works and what we're doing here, and we don't really have to go through all of those things. Okay.
Nope.
The next, so this system design team meeting is where we're coming together to make this collective decision on the revenue model. And just as a note, this is just the decision for the proposed plan. So it's not like we're making the decision. We're just becoming aligned on a decision that will continue to be, it's like a working decision. And once we get to the plan, that's something that we're going to share. So once we figure out all these working details and figure out some alignment on all of these things, we're going to put forth this plan to the business owners and also the community. So in general, this step is not always done. Usually, in my experience, work is done to plan a system, and then you can choose to participate or not, or you can share your input once all the work is already done. And that, in my experience, has been really frustrating because I've had mana'o or input that would largely change the course of the work. So this is an extra step that we're doing to make sure that everyone is invited to the earliest conversations about the plan. So it's okay that there aren't a lot of us here in drones every single week, but it's also a great opportunity for us to do our own work in the communities that we live in and work in, and bring those thoughts back to this meeting. So we're revisiting the revenue model decision, and we're hoping to cover topics like the return incentives, options, and models, and then some of the technology for checking out and for the experience of checking out the dishes. The food and drinkware. Just as a review, we're here. Oh no. Oh, yes, we're here. Okay. So in this week, again, we're looking at the incentives and point of sale technology, and we've done 2 previous system design team meetings. We have about 3 more to go, and so we're gonna model this similar process as we go. Ellen, do you have your hand raised?
I do. Jen, Council Jen just texted me or whatever, added me and said that video and audio aren't working, but she can hear us. So
Mm.
I wanted to see if she might be able to use her phone. If not, if she has any comments, I'll keep an eye out and pass them on.
Oh, perfect. That would be awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really super great. We'll get to it, but I really am so grateful, Councilmember Kagiwara, for the ways that you were able to engage your staff to get some of our information out to the community. Just really grateful for your material support in that way. You're really, it's critical. Mahalo. I don't think we need to go over. Oh, sorry, Ellen, do you still have your hand raised, or was that from earlier?
I don't know how to unraise it.
It's okay. I'll do it.
Okay, thank
Awesome.
you.
So as a note, the background of this photo is Pu'uanahulu. Just this is the area where the landfill is. So this is the beautiful Ahupua'a and land division where all of the trash from Hawaii Island is deposited. And from a cultural perspective, understanding that all of the work that we're doing, all of the outreach, all of the slide development and the conversations and the plans and the meetings is all for our aloha for this place and our land and Aina aloha in general. So that's why this photo is the background. And I don't think we have to go over the how it works. I think a lot of us are familiar with that. So we'll just flip through so that we can see these beautiful collaborations of Hawaiian language and English language with beautifully taken photos. Just flipping through here. Awesome. So I would like to, before we get into the conversations, I'd like to invite Ellie to just give us another recap on the alignment model and how we're meant to engage in this space.
Kule. I'll keep it short because I think most people are familiar at this point. Alignment means you are willing to support the decision and you're willing to let go of other feelings or attachments you may have had and take that decision forward as though it were your own. Before we make a decision as a group, we always test for paramount and controlled objectives. And these are sincerely felt concerns that a proposed decision may cause harm. If you go to the next page, Kule. The way this looks like in process, and we will do a version of this today. It might not go exactly like this because sometimes we flow a little bit between the rounds, but during the process, everyone will have a chance to ask clarifying questions, to provide reactions, and to provide objections. And the goal is to arrive at a restated proposal that addresses all of the concerns and objections that have been raised and to find that point of alignment. And if we don't get there, everything is recorded. And so we do understand, where the group was at when we ended the conversation and moved forward. And of course, this process will be followed up by 2 rounds of additional public comment and review on the system design. So that will not be your last chance to weigh in before things are final. And then lastly, the last slide here is just the be a good person, please slide. Be a good neighbor, be a good citizen, be a good participant in the process. So that's all from me. Back to you, Kule. You're on mute though.
Hello? Hello?
There you go. Now you're back.
Awesome. Mahalo for that. We'd just like to recap to say it's important to have Pono principles, and I think we all know that. It's been a really, just in the other spaces of my life, I've been working on understanding how to model this alignment model in some ways, and a lot of times compromise is used, like the word compromise is used to try to come to a good conclusion or settling point. And I recognize that Oiwi people or native people and Aboriginal people need to compromise a lot. Like we'll say, this is going to work, this is not going to work. And all the time we're expected to overly compromise to get to a conclusion that we don't agree with. And so just when I hear about the alignment model, sometimes it puts me into that position. But just to recap, that we had that whole PD INA gathering on August 12th, and that's a really good example of the embodiment of the alignment model. So some folks were opposed to the idea of a reusable foodware system in the beginning. And then after we really unpacked some of the consequences of inaction, we had to measure the cost of inaction versus the cost of potentially, as a specific example, potentially importing reusables that may end up in the landfill anyway. So there was some of that weighing that the folks had to do. And toward the end, it wasn't really a compromise, but everyone was able to recognize that moving forward, we were all in alignment that moving forward was important. We didn't all agree exactly on the way that was going to be done, but we agreed on some level of alignment. So we hope to model that in these spaces, and I'm grateful to have the time to be open and consider revisions to a lot of this work as we go and as more people get involved. But so we after meeting about this, the revenue model last week, which we were charged to make this collective decision of alignment. And the question is, are there any paramount and principled objections to going ahead with the business paper reuse revenue model? We had some manao about that, but the general consensus of the manao that was gathered was that there were no principled objections. I think Councilman Kagiwara made a good point that we should reach out to more businesses, and Tiff helped me to create a spreadsheet for that kind of engagement, which I'll share about later. But I'm wondering if anybody solicited or collected any additional information about maybe support or opposition to this decision. So in the last week, throughout the community and business engagement that we've done, did anyone collect any insight that might be any paramount and principled objections to going ahead with the business paper reuse model?
I didn't get anything one way or the other. So
Gonna have to agree with you there.
Kool-Aid, this is Jen.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. Yeah.
No, thank you.
So I talked to quite a few people, some of it was during the lunch rush hour, so couldn't talk long. I should have planned that better. But anyway, people, when I explained it, a lot of people seemed very excited about the possibilities. Asked them to please fill out the survey and get involved if they could. But, I'd say there were several in particular. I talked to the folks at Cronies, and they just happened to be having like a manager's meeting. So that was great. I got to talk to them for a couple minutes. They seemed excited about the prospect, as well as I talked to the chef at Aloha Mondays, and he said that he would definitely get his wife and business partner involved. Several people said they were very interested, but it was kind of last minute to get them to come to this meeting. But I think if we reach out to them specifically, that they would definitely be interested in participating. I gave you guys the list of the people I contacted.
Yes, I think from what I understand, Tiff did go ahead and make those edits. So I'm so excited and thankful. It feels like our capacity is expanding because of your involvement with our work. So thank you so much. That makes me really excited because I play music at Cronies. So I meant to reach out to them and didn't get a chance. So I'm really grateful that you had that opportunity and that they were open to to hearing more as we go. So mahalo for those updates. I think maybe at this point it's okay for us to agree on this alignment model. And again, it's just to incorporate in, I'm sorry, to agree with this revenue model, to agree to be in alignment with this revenue model. And again, it's just to propose the most beginning plan that will then put out for community engagement. But is anyone opposed to agreeing on this alignment model as we move forward? On this revenue model as we move forward?
I'm not opposed to it, but I know previously, maybe outside of the team meeting, there was some discussion around feedback that you got around having the amount, the per use fee lower depending on the volume of containers the individual businesses are using. Are we trying to narrow in on that level of specificity now, or are we just revenue model is per use fee and we'll work out the details later on, or it's a question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm imagining that this is that will incorporate our, those the post-its that we did last week. I was gonna say last year. This one. So I imagine that our plan will reflect these ideas. So it won't just be business paper reuse revenue model, but it'll also be I imagine, and Ellie, correct me if I'm wrong, that the plan that we're drafting will include a lot of these considerations. So for example, business paper reuse, it was recommended that business owners are incentivized as they use a higher volume as they are able to engage with the higher volume of reusables. And then so for the question is to our wonderful specialist of reusable foodwares. Is it correct that the next step is to compile these considerations and also the decision to align on the business paper reuse revenue model into the plan?
Yes, I think that the cleanest way to do this is to incorporate any specifics that are really related to the proposal into the proposal so that people are aligning with the most clear statement of what we're proposing to do. As I recall, and I'm sort of remembering these post-its here, a lot of these are a bit broader than the reuse payment model here. So there was a lot of really good discussion that is related in different ways, but it's none of these other than the one that we've highlighted here around the payment level changing based on your volume usage would result in, I don't think, a modification of the proposed business per payu. There's a lot of good context and things, as you said, that can be built into the plan. I think that it would be appropriate to add, with volume price discounts into the proposal so that everyone knows what we're aligning to, if that's what the group wants to align on. I don't think there was anything else here that was truly needing to be added to the proposal itself. I think a lot of these were comments and considerations about how do you frame it to someone, or how do you, what's the right comparison of apples to oranges and things like that. But nothing else, I don't think, and I'm double checking myself here, would change the proposal. Is that right? Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Is
I
it,
would like, yeah.
is it possible, the colors are related to the people who posted, right?
Oh,
Is that it?
administratively, I'm unsure because I was just like, this is cute. I'm gonna put this color here. So maybe they're not
Okay.
actually color coordinated, but I can definitely change the
So-
color of these post-its.
So what I was wondering is, just so we have a record from last week on this Jamboard, could we highlight the one, I remember Troy specifically saying incentivizing it. And so I was wondering if we could somehow, we've got the rockets there, but could we either circle the one that's going to go forward with the proposal? So that we
Yeah,
have a
I
record
think
of it.
that's
Is
a
that
great
okay
idea.
with everyone?
Mhm. Now, if I could just find it.
Yeah. I think that's a good point,
So this
Ellen. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, this is Jen. I was just wondering, so I can see the appeal of incentivizing people with a lower price point for volume. I just want to bring up that we have a lot of small businesses who may not be able to do big volume, but it still may really affect their bottom line. So I want us to just keep that in mind going forward.
I think Jen's right on that. And from what I remember Troy saying is to provide incentives. I don't remember him specifically saying based on volume, but no, Jen's absolutely right. We have some very small, I mean, like Paul's Place, tiny, 3-table eatery. So,
I think
yeah.
those were distinct points when we had the discussion last week. I think that the comment that came around volume discounts was from one of the businesses that I believe Kool-Aid had spoken to, and the comment from Troy, I think, is great around, helping businesses make the transition and helping them cover the costs initially. And I think we spoke to this last week also, but the good news on that is that the pollution prevention grant from the EPA actually explicitly provides that technical assistance and some financial incentives for businesses to participate in the system and to get started with that. So I think that we just have a few addendums, or addenda, I guess would be the correct way to say that, to the collective decision here, which is we're going to go ahead with businesses pay per reuse. There will be, we will take advantage of existing resources to provide businesses with support to join the system and get started with it and to offset some of those costs. I think that's something that we know we will do, and we have the funding to do it. So that's great. And then I absolutely take the point on volume, that it may be that volume discounts are going to be out of reach for most of the Gila businesses anyway. So I don't know if it's still worth including for those businesses for whom it is relevant, or if it feels unhelpful to include it, if it feels like it, then it makes the smaller businesses feel worse about having to pay more. I'd love to hear thoughts on that. So yeah, I think it's worth just making sure that whatever we're aligning on is explicitly the point of alignment, and then we can go from there. And I see we have another hand raised.
Auntie Marcia. Hi, Auntie Marcia.
Yes, good morning. I was not here last week. My main thought around this is, as I'm listening to the comments now, I'm thinking in the way of, yes, the small businesses. There is a proliferation of food trucks and things like that. And I'm thinking, how is this particular plan that we're looking at, is that going to be really targeted just to businesses who are going to buy into this, reuse system? How is there any consideration given to businesses that are not part of it, but is there an angle in which there might be some way to have them as an ancillary type of because if they want to reuse things, reuse foodware and serviceware, I think that is definitely a place that should be considered. But I don't know how that would fit into this model. So that was just my thoughts.
Are you okay? So I want to make sure that I understand the mana'o. Is it that small businesses should be able to participate as well, even if they can't manage or if they don't and are not able to keep up with certain volumes? Is that the mana'o?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellie, but I don't think there's going to be a minimum amount of volume that you have to be able to X sell. I don't think there's a minimum amount per month or anything that you need to be able to do. It's just that higher volumes are able to be incentivized with lower rates. I think as a note, I see your hand up, Jen Navarra. But as a note, the idea, the principle, a general principle is that the cost of the reuse fee will not be greater than 10% of the cost of the disposable. I think that's correct, or that's the intention anyway. So hopefully we're still able to keep it at a reasonable rate, that small businesses can afford. It's just that as the volume increases, then they'll be incentivized. But I hope this answers your question. But does it answer your question if I explain it that way? That anyone will be able to participate as a vendor? Does that answer the question, Auntie Marcia?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
I'm so verbose. I have so many words. I don't know why it's taking me so many words to say a small
No, you're doing very well. Thank you.
Mahalo. Jen?
I take the point that, smaller businesses may not reach a point to be incentivized for a lower price. But I just want to point out two things. I think getting bigger businesses to come on board is going to lower costs for everybody, for the small businesses, because we're going to have more volume in the system, which will lower the price for everyone. So if having an incentive can catch some bigger fish, that's going to help everybody out. It is also a benefit to small businesses. And also there's a difference between dine-in restaurants and those that use takeout or disposable containers for all of their food. And so there's a difference in volume there as well. Even if it's a small business, if all of it is takeout containers versus, Jackie Ray's, who probably does a very low volume of takeout containers because most people are dining in with plates. There's just a difference. So I guess to make it fair, it's not fair for the, smaller businesses that aren't doing as much volume. I guess there's inequities in terms of volume, just for the two reasons I stated. So I think it's a benefit to have the incentive if we can catch some bigger businesses, and I think it will benefit everybody in the end.
Awesome. Mahalo. I agree.
Lule,
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to make sure you saw Hannah's comment in the chat.
No, I didn't at all. Okay, let's see. Because here we go. Yes. Okay, so also this mana'o aloha, this beloved idea was to make the revenue model a temporary model. And in the future, we would be able to engage government programming, and I think maybe the word might be subsidy, but government support of this so that the government can take on some of that cost. I think it's called something that starts with an A model. What model is that?
I don't think I know what word you're trying to think of.
Utility model. It's a U.
Utility. Oh yes, it's a
Utility
U.
model.
Yeah.
It's really coming to me now. Anyway, the utility model, we can review that. But so Hannah was just saying that there's so this is the business paper reuse model, and the utility model. Oh, the utility service model, as noted on the bottom, is similar to a municipal recycling service where government uses taxpayer funding either in general or through a fee or fee for service to pay for the reuse service. So this model is not appropriate for now. We haven't developed any kind of system yet. So there's not, I think, once we get this program off the ground and things are easily visible as to how the system works, maybe we can, in 5 years or so, as Hannah mentioned, we can lean back into the idea of adopting this utility service model.
I like the idea, if folks are open to it, is when we put this sort of the statement for alignment forth, which I think you're almost coming back around to, having that be stated in the proposal would be appropriate to say, you know, we align on revisiting this model in 5 years' time to determine, you know, if there's potential to tap into, say, cost savings that, you know, the county has achieved through lower waste management costs, for example, that could be redirected to reuse, for example. Oh, and one thing I'll just add, I really appreciated Marcia's comment about food trucks. You know, one of the reasons the business paper reuse model helps, one of the ways that it helps everyone participate is that you don't have to buy in to the system. Anyone can participate. You're just paying per reuse. You don't have to buy, you know, 100 or 1,000 items. You know, you're just borrowing the items for a small fee. So it actually makes it very easy for more people to participate because all you have to do is agree to try it out. You don't have to spend a bunch of money up front on inventory of some new thing.
How do I not get my text messages up here? Can you guys see my text messages when they come in?
No,
Did you see?
you don't see them.
Okay, great.
No, they're just for you.
It came up on my screen and I was like, okay, my brother. Okay, anyways.
At least I'm not seeing them. I don't know if other people are seeing them, but they're not on my screen. Okay.
No, no,
You know
can.
how they pop down on the thing. Okay, no, that's awesome. But okay, so I'm circling these things because these are the notes that we're going to actually materially add into our proposal. And then aloha Uncle Troy, good to see you in this space. I think we were talking about something that we didn't, I don't know if we addressed this last time you're here, but when you mentioned toward the end how important it is for us to incentivize businesses to participate because not everybody is on this Aloha in the train that we're on. We forgot to mention that there are some funding, there's some funding that we were able to secure that specifically goes to incentivize businesses to participate, and that's the P2 funding. So so we're definitely prepared to make some movements on incentivizing them, at least in the beginning, as we work to understand how to do that sustainably. But awesome. Okay, cool. So I'm making a motion to I'm learning about Robert's Rules of Order, Uncle Robert. Anyway, I'm making a motion to move forward with this alignment model as described by the circled green post-its, or like, yes. Can we move on?
I second.
Okay, mahalo. Let the records reflect that we're moving along. And again, we're always open to revisiting this thing. It's just what we're adopting as we work to get the plan together.
Yeah, I think the question is, are there any paramount and principled objections that anyone wants to raise before we consider this aligned for now?
Okay. Mahalo.
That's some language you can use.
Yes, I make a second motion. Anyway, can I move on, everyone?
I think so. I'm not hearing anything. I think we're good.
Okay, awesome. Next, we're looking at return incentive models when it comes to checking out. We had a whole PowerPoint, but we're just diving right into the work. So I think that's fair for us to just keep going in this direction. So these are the models that are meant to incentivize the consumer return of the reusable, which is agreed upon at checkout. So for example, the non-return fee model is where consumers don't pay anything when they check out the reusable, and they're only charged a fee if the reusable is not returned. And then do you have your hand up?
I do.
I love that.
Sorry, I'm still waking up, but
Okay.
may we go back to the Jamboard, please?
Yes, this is the Jamboard.
As a librarian, I'm concerned about documentation. So
Okay.
the previous screen there, I would like to see the date that these 3 Post-its. This whole thing here was done last week, but today the circles are done today. So if
Okay.
there's a note that can go in there on the collective decision with the Jamboard, you know, all the colors and stuff,
Yes.
that be that day, and that's last week, and that the circles be identified as today. I think it'll help us later on. Maybe. Hopefully.
Awesome. Sounds
Thank,
good.
thank you. Sorry, folks, but
I'm gonna we can come back and reconcile the dates, but I'm just SDTM stands for System Design Team Meeting. So we did the stickies last meeting, and even the stickies that I added were just thoughts that came up last week that I didn't add or I can't find currently. So the circles of alignment. Oh, we're getting profound here. Circles of alignment. The circles of alignment happened in this meeting, System Design Team Meeting number 3. Is that helpful?
mahalo ku'ule. That's really good. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Mahalo, mahalo. Okay. So the non-return fee model is where consumers pay nothing at the checkout and they're charged a fee only if the reusable is not returned. The deposit model is where they pay a deposit at checkout, which is reimbursed when the reusable is returned. Is anyone confused about those two different options? It's exciting because I feel passionate about this question because accessibility wise, I know for a fact that my dad will not probably be paying $4 extra per plate when we're buying food for the IMU workers. Like he will not be able to do that deposit, you know, like he won't be able to front all of that money ahead of time just to use reusable things. I don't know if it's going to be $4, but whatever the deposit is. We usually have a lot of people that we have to feed, so that's going to be a lot of deposits that we might have to pay, versus me being able to take all of those things and return them after we eat them. I can assure that we won't be charged the fee with the non-return fee model. It was said earlier that the verbiage of that non-return fee model, that doesn't mean that there is no fee if you don't return it. It means that there is a fee for non-return. So there's a fee if you don't return it. So just to clarify. So those are the two options. And the third is that to use both systems simultaneously, where consumers have the option to use either incentive model. So those are the ideas that were proposed. And this is meant to be where we add our mana'o, but so which type of checkout system would work best for you was the question that we asked in our work with the during the Perpetual Week when we asked for feedback from the community. And a lot of people mentioned that they would prefer the deposit option, which is that they would pay ahead of time and be reimbursed. But the Perpetual Perspective recommends the non-return fee. So Ellie, can you share a little bit about those concepts of this discrepancy here?
Yeah, yeah, it does sort of jump out at you when you look at the page. Like, why are we recommending the thing that most people said they didn't want? I think that your perspective that you shared, Kule, is a big part of this. We really don't want upfront costs to discourage people from participating in the system, and we really want the system to be truly accessible to anyone who wants to use it. One of the things that we've heard from people that, and I think it's worth acknowledging, we've done a lot of research broadly and sort of into human behavior and how it intersects with this. And I think it's worth noting that even though we think of ourselves as rational humans, people who study our behavior would say that the logic of our rationality is not always super consistent. And so part of where I think that can come in is the idea of paying a deposit for something, once you've done that, you feel like you've bought something. There's something that happens in your mind where you're like, I've paid for this, therefore I now own it. Whereas the non-return fee is more like a library book where you're using it, you know, and you know, but you know that it's not yours. You know that you have to bring it back. And I think that thinking about how this system will work, so it will fit into people's daily lives, we want to make sure that we're aligning it with what we know about behavior as much as possible. And so that's one thing that I think well, there's two things I guess I've mentioned so far. One is just accessibility, making sure that it doesn't cost you money to use the reuse system as long as you return the things you're borrowing. And then secondly, we know that behaviorally, we want to encourage that instinct to return something. And we know that, let's say the deposit is $2. I don't know what it's going to be. That'll depend a lot on what the items are going to be, because it needs to cover the cost of an individual item to be replaced. And that's a discussion for a future topic or a future conversation. So let's assume for the sake of argument that it's $2. If you pay $2 as a deposit, and then your mental math is it worth it to me to make the effort to return this to get my $2? And so people are not actually willing to work as hard to get that $2 as they are if they know that, okay, you have the thing, and if you don't return it, you're going to be charged $2. That's much more motivating. Actually, we hate getting charged penalties behaviorally, even if it's the same amount of money that we wouldn't really go out of our way to get back. So I think that that's one of the reasons that the perpetual perspective ends up a little out of sync with what people have expressed a preference for, is that when we think about what is going to make the system really successful over time, is people bringing things back at very high rates and ideally somewhat quickly. The non-return fee model, where you get penalized, people don't like the word penalty, but essentially like you're motivated to avoid a penalty rather than trying to get a buck or two back. And you don't feel like you've purchased it, but rather you feel like you've borrowed it and you want to give it back because that's what we are, what we know we should do when we borrow something from someone. Those are the main reasons I would argue are put Perpetual's recommendation not quite in alignment with what the community perspective was.
Mahalo, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I think I'm interested to know what you folks think, because it's significant. It's a significant thing that we asked the community what they thought. They voted, and we're recommending against the vote. It's a little triggering because there's a lot of time when we spend a lot of time to go and give our mana on certain things, and people be voting against what the heck we just said. So the principle and the concept is tough to get through. But it helps, and it's a relief to hear some of that reasoning behind why that is. I don't know who had their hand up first.
Jennifer did.
Okay, Jen.
I just wanted to add that I know from when we did the actual engagement where we were talking to people around this topic at the Ho'opili Aina, that in people's minds, their idea of a deposit was like 25 cents, 15 cents, 10 cents. Like they're like, we should have a deposit. And I'm like, well, how much should that deposit be? And I think the most anybody was willing to go up to was like $1. So I don't think when we had the workshop, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we posed a deposit amount of like $5 or $10, right? I think it was just, these are the different potentials, but it didn't state a dollar amount. And so I think if that dollar amount was stated, people might have a different idea, because I think when we think of deposit, we're probably thinking of like our high five, 5 cents per can. Yeah. Sure, I'll pay 5 cents up front and get to keep a really nice, stainless steel cup. So I don't know for sure, but I speculate like if there was an actual suggested amount that was in the dollars, people may have a different feeling. I certainly would. Like I would much rather not pay a penalty than have to pay something up front. And I think we know many people just would not be able to afford it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mahalo. Ellen?
Yeah, and one of the questions, and I don't know if it belongs in here, and the responses was to allow that people can BYO, bring your own container too. So that may offset some of the, if it's the bad behavior, anyway. Okay, thank you. So let's don't forget that BYO is part of whatever we put forward.
Mm-hmm. Mahalo. I wonder if it would make sense to make space for that in the proposal, the bring your own, that's something that we were advised to recommend, because that, like, to really advocate for that. And as I spoke with Dagny, I don't think Dagny's here just yet, but as I spoke with Dagny, Dagny lives in Paris, and she works in, I want to say, like, higher level spaces of reuse, and she looks into like certain policies and different things like that. So she told me that it's people are making moves on being able to advocate in spaces of governance for us to be allowed to bring our own containers and use them. So it's not just Hawaii people who want to use our own containers. It's a lot of people in the world would like that to be an option. So just hopeful for that Mana'o. And then do you think that how should that be reflected on this Jamboard? Is that something that should be reflected here?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe I should go while we're continuing. Maybe I can pull up the question that was asked at the community workshops on that. But I remember that being, I think we had some good response on that.
If you wanted to bring their own, was that the question? Yeah.
Ellie, I don't know. How could we incorporate that? BYOC.
Yeah, I think we can just add another proposal on the table. So I don't know how easy it is to make a new page in the Jamboard, Kule, but you can just add a new page that says, that this group wants to make sure that the option to bring your own is enabled. We can do what exactly the right word is, but yeah, that, bringing your own is sort of always the most sustainable option. That's going to be the lowest impact. So that should be the kind of the first and most emphasized option. And the system is there to support all the times when it doesn't work to bring your own for one reason or another.
Great, that sounds good. We'll figure out the wording.
Yeah.
Ellie, are you aware of like systems to get around the Department of Health? I mean, it's a Department of Health reasons why we're not allowed to bring our own containers in. But I know, like, Starbucks, they are getting around that with some kind of protocol. So is there something for that other than like coffee cups in place?
Yeah, there's a few examples we can look at. So drinks tend to be easier from a bring your own context, because the drinks don't have to usually kind of be brought into the kitchen to be filled, the way that Starbucks is doing it, for example, and they are really emphasizing this as an option. Right now, they're providing rewards, and they're even doing it in the drive-through, which I think is operationally complex, and I'm so delighted that they're doing that. They have a designated clean cup that they use internally, where they prepare the whole beverage in there, and then they transfer it into the customer's container, for example. So drinks is actually usually pretty well accepted that you can use your own item. But I think there may be, clarifying work to be done, to really ensure that's super clear and super accepted. Sometimes restaurants just don't want to deal with it, even if it's allowed. So they kind of come up with their own reason. So that can be something we dig into and understand. How can we support restaurants in making that doable and understand what their concerns are? So I think that's one piece. What I wanted to mention also is that the way that a restaurant can accommodate, like for food containers, for example. One business that does this in New York City is called Just Salad. And they have a bit of a different model for how they do this. You buy their specific bowl, and every time you come, if you bring your bowl, they receive it, and they have a whole operating procedure for how they receive your bowl. They have a receiving plate, they have receiving tongs, so that the folks who are preparing the food, like the bowl never touches anything that they're using to prepare food. It doesn't touch their hands. So there's ways to do it. It just requires getting approval for those operating procedures for what restaurants are going to follow. I think it would be really interesting to think about how that could be built into some of the technical assistance and the pollution prevention grants, that sort of that training and support could be part of the engagement that we do with the businesses that are going to participate in the reuse system. Because I think they need to go together. So that's, I hope, not too long of an answer to your question.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, the pie chart shows it's fairly significant, the BYOCs.
I think that the key piece there is, do you ever bring your own reusable cup or food container? It's not, do you always? You know,
Yeah.
I think we know that people want the option, and they should absolutely have the option. We also know that even the most committed of us sometimes want a drink or food, and we don't have our item with us. And what do we do? So, yeah.
It's like bring your own reusable grocery bag.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be buying grocery bags every single time I go over there, just because I always be forgetting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Exactly. So if you could borrow one instead of buying one, wouldn't that be a better option?
Totally.
Yeah.
Within 1 week, I would accumulate quite a few bags that I would be able to return.
I think that what I might propose is, I'm glad that we've captured this as an additional proposal. I think it might make sense to not test for alignment this week, but rather to put it in the materials for next week, and to put a little bit more background in there, and then we can revisit it with the group next week. And get it.
I wonder if it's possible to, like, maybe between meetings.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Right. Some kind of wording that might be included in the proposal. Like a little snippet about what might be in there. So maybe
I think
we
that's a
can
great idea.
and then use that to make motions and, you know.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay, is there anything, so I guess I'm curious to know, because we talked about the bring your own idea. Considering the, how do we, I guess that would go maybe here. Considering the manao that, 2, 1. So deposit choice may be different, may have, like, may depend, may like have depended on, may depend on assumption of low like cost. I don't know how to word this, and we can wordsmith it later. But so that's something to consider, that when folks voted on the deposit, they weren't thinking that it was going to be like $2 or such, or that it would have to cover the cost of the work. You know, they weren't thinking about that. Some manao in the chat is that the deposit model makes the system accessible for folks who use cash. And I agree. Some thoughts also were that the non-return fee model makes the program accessible to folks who do not have that cash, but will be able to return the reusable without incurring any fees, i.e. the houseless population of our lives. So that's part of what was shared. I guess the question is, so The perpetual perspective is that the non-return fee model for this system would work best, perhaps, but so would work with reuse system providers to accommodate cash in the system for folks who do not have access to a credit card. Additionally, we propose to partner with local government to accommodate the use of benefits cards and or transportation cards for engaging in the system. So these are all potential collaborations that could happen. So is an example, just consulting here, is an example of that, like if the penalty or if the non-return fee is like, what is a proposed amount, like what kind of amounts are we looking at for those fees typically in other areas that this system has been adopted in?
The goal would be that it would be in line with the replacement cost of the item that is not being returned.
Okay.
And so that can vary a lot depending on what that material is. But yeah, the idea is that if you don't return something, that the amount that's charged allows that item to be replaced in the system without the system losing money.
Okay. So for example, and I'm wondering because I think this is saying that we would work with the reuse service providers to accommodate cash in the system for folks who do not have access to a credit card. So that seems like both systems to me. But so if I have like a $5, if I have $5 in cash, does that mean that I will be able to purchase some kind of card and put the $5 on the card and then use that card to check out the thing, and then if I don't return it, it'll just take it off of that card?
Yeah, that's the basic idea. It's called a token. Sometimes it's called a tokenization. So yeah, creating essentially a prepaid option where you've prepaid something, but then, so then that you lose that amount. So it is a bit like a hybrid system, I suppose, when you frame it like that.
So, but that option would be considered under the non-return fee model?
Yes.
Okay. So it is, there is a way for people who don't have a credit card to participate with cash. It's just not the deposit. It's not technically the deposit model because they're not paying anything. They still have access to that cash, right?
I think that's the right idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Though it may be splitting hairs. I'm actually not sure if we're making a real distinction there. One thing that is probably worth saying is that what can be nice with the tokenization is it can be a sort of a prepaid option. Like it could be something you have on your keychain or something like if you are someone who doesn't use credit cards or doesn't have credit cards, then you can use that token in some form, whether it's a card or a keychain or whatever it is. But then for populations for whom any sort of a penalty or fee might be challenging, you could actually provide those tokens to people for free, like as part of a benefits program, if that makes sense. So that they're not the ones making the prepayment. Like the system can still access that funding if they get lost, but for people, and that would be something to think about, I guess is what I'm saying, is that that can provide further accommodation for low income people, if that's helpful.
May I say something about that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing that I'm thinking about, because if someone pays the deposit, but they don't return the item and the item gets picked up by anyone else, if they have if there is that mechanism where they can get the money instead, right? I mean, technically, couldn't someone do that? I'm thinking about our beverage containers now, okay? People are buying, they paid the 5 cents. They may not be returning that bottle, but someone who picks it up anywhere could. And I'm imagining if there were these items, these reusable items, and they get on the ground, but someone sees it and they know that they can get, say, 50 cents back, there's a way for them to do that. Am
Yeah.
I not making sense?
You are absolutely making sense, and that is that is one of the incentives that we wanted to talk about today. The way it's currently on paper, and it doesn't have to be this way, is the idea that when you have the non-return fee, yeah, if I lose it and it's on my credit card, no one else cares to pick it up, right? Because it's not worth anything to anyone else unless they just want to take it home and use it. So there has to be a value on it, even if it's if we're using the non-return fee model. So one way to do this is you have a redemption value, which is more in line with like the high five value. So let's say the redemption value, and I think we have this here somewhere, don't we? Kool-Aid, yeah. So redemption value is one of the things that we've talked about in the context of this design and thinking about, so if I drop my item or I lose it or it falls out of my bag, anyone who wants to pick it up and take it back to a redemption center would get 15 cents. And I then wouldn't get charged for it. So they would be, really helping me out also. I think maybe I would get charged the 15 cents is the way we currently have it set up, but I would be charged much less than I would have been charged had it not been returned to the system. So I think what we're trying to do is take the best of both worlds is the idea, but again, this is the perfect time to kind of discuss how this can work, because if we think that the value of the item is going to be, we know it'll be more than 15 cents. It'll probably be at least $1, if not $2 to $5. To have items worth that much, like we don't want to create an incentive for theft either. I don't want someone to like run by me and grab my coffee out of my hand because they know that if they can return that cup somewhere, they're going to get $5 for it. Like that also creates kind of a bad incentive. So I don't know, Marcia, if I've
with the deposit.
If you use a deposit and the deposit is $2 to $5, then that item is effectively worth that much. So anyone who gets it and takes it back can get that money for it. So that it's all incentives in one direction or another. We just have to align them to get the right outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Marcia, I hope what I spoke to was building off of what you were raising, because I think it was a really good point.
Oh, yes. And so are we thinking that whatever a model we choose, this is going to be the model? It's not like each business has an option to choose a different model, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe this business will be deposit, but the other one will be, a non-return. I mean, here's the bottom line. It's got to be simple. It's got to be the most simple. That's why in a way I go for the non-return when I'm thinking about the people here. I'm just thinking for Hilo, for Hawaii. I don't know. That's just my thought. That's all.
Yeah.
And my thoughts go all over the place, but
no, it's okay. We're coming with you. So I agree 100%. And I also am upheld, and TC, I see your hand up, but I'm really encouraged that the non-return fee model is accessible to people who don't have a credit card. There's just another step to that. And I think the majority of folks in general do have a credit card, or a debit card or some kind of card. But for those who don't want to have that risk, they can participate with the token, which means I will buy this token for $5 or whatever it is, and I'll have this with me. And if I don't return my thing, it doesn't affect my debit card. It'll just take out of here. And if I do return it, I still have this thing that I can use to check more out. So it is accessible to folks who don't have a card, from what I understand. So, yes, TC?
So it might help some of the folks that are participating to hear about a real world model of this. We instituted a reusable takeout container at the university I worked at, and the students that were checking out those containers could either use a credit card directly or their meal plan cards. So they weren't having to come up with the cash directly. They had already prepaid for a meal plan. And so there was a way for the cashier to put this on there as a non-food item that was still allowed to be charged through this process. And when they got that container, in essence, it kind of follows the deposit model to a large degree, but they weren't having to use something that was extra because they had already signed up for a meal plan. So at least in theory, you could view it as if you don't have a credit card, you can sign up somewhere and get some kind of a either token or card that shows you have paid a fee somehow to be able to take advantage of this container. When they turn the container back in, they then got a token. It was actually a coin that was a specialized coin because we used machines that read the barcode. When you put the container back in, it would read the barcode and spit out a token that you could then keep with you. And if you turned it into an area that didn't have a machine, you'd still get a token back. So if you handed it directly to a server, at a location that didn't have the barcode reader, you'd still get the token back. So there was still an exchange of something that showed you'd paid for this. And as long as you had your token, you could then get a new container. You take your container, and when you turn that container in, however you did it, you got your token again. So you only had to pay for it once. Or if you weren't paying for it because you had a meal plan and, at the time of sale, you had already arranged to be able to, in essence, start this, exchange system. And there's other things we can talk about on the return incentives, but it actually worked reasonably well, I would say, to not have the consumer have to pay up front every time once something was arranged to get you into that system is my main point. And if it worked with students, which I'm going to say aren't always the most focused on the minutia of life in a college setting, and it worked pretty well, I think it will work in folks that are being a little more cognizant of their daily activities. So, thank you.
Mahalo. I think to sum that up in a way, it seems like because the hybridized version of the non-return fee model seems more like a deposit, which I think is what you're talking about when it comes with to that initial payment. So I think there's a couple different things that you mentioned. I'm hoping that we can model the food card, meal card thing with the SNAP card. So I'm hoping there's a way that we can collaborate with the SNAP folks to be able to do that so that it's accessible to others. So I noted those things. Mahalo, TC, for your experience. Awesome. Ellen?
Just a minor thing. Many people here Mary Monarch, for example, uses the script system. So if we start saying script, I think more people will go, oh yeah, that's right. That's what we do at the fair or at Mary Monarch, rather than a token. When I think of a token, then I'm going, is that a coin kind of thing? But script, we all know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I don't even know how do you even spell that? Is it script?
SCRIPT.
Okay, great.
Script.
Yeah, it's been script or something. What even is that? My dad. Okay. Go buy the script. The what? Okay. Anyway, Mahalo. Jen? Oh, her hand was not up. Okay, awesome.
Sorry, I meant to unmute, but I just lowered my hand. I think it would be really valuable to engage with Hope Services, utilize that interview with your friend, the unhoused person, do some I think some direct communication with people would be important before we make this decision. Because I don't know that we got as meaningful as input as we maybe need from the workshop that we did at the bandstand.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is something that TIFF has capacity to work on this week. But I mean, I don't know if we have to make this decision next week, or if we can, revisit this towards the end of this process where we're having these meetings to give TIFF the time to do the engagement. But I think we need to do the engagement to really get a meaningful input on what's really going to work for people. Because I think of people that don't have vehicles. I think of people, Kapuna, and maybe I think unhoused people maybe is not a big deal. Like, they're downtown Hilo, they're gonna like be around places to return easily. But those are the groups, like people that don't leave their house often to go shopping. And I honestly think that we're probably gonna, in long term, to really make this an accessible system, we're gonna have to have some kind of pickup system. I used to manage a property, so like, I don't, this topic is meaningful to me because I did manage a property with a lot of, low income people on Social Security or disability, with a lot of mental health issues, and like, being functional at the level of like making sure you get your container back after a week is like something I think a lot of people are going to struggle with. And how can we design something that's really going to accommodate those needs? And I would say like everyone on that property like didn't have a car, so I think we need to get more input to really see like what might work. Because I think for the majority, I think like the families that go to the store every couple days or get takeout once a week, like, think the non-return fee model is going to work. But I think there's just a segment of the population that we need to get more input from to really figure out what might work long term.
Yeah, Kule and I have been, that's been the priority since I came on, which isn't even a whole week. So I'm still gathering more information on the bigger scope of the project, but that is the priority. And so for this project to be in Hilo and not have that demographic an active part of this conversation would be a disservice. And so that's why I think my position was even created, to address that. And we have been organizing, and we are preparing to be one-on-one and talk with small groups to have their mana'o. And the one thing about Hilo being somewhat still a rural community and the underrepresented voices in our community, we cannot come back and present something without their mana'o. So even if we know that might not be the best option, we still need to include it in our next share. And then add, well, now this is all of the information regarding the deposit. That alone, the cost, the fee for the amount is people are gonna turn the other way. So we need to be, even if it's not the best option that we might think will be what we go with in the long run, as part of the process of community engagement, we still want to include it. And then just bring more information and get people more and informed. So those are the things that come with my kuleana to this project. And Kule and I have been meeting and preparing with not just the interviews, but a big part of my engagement is going to be with the smaller groups and the continuous conversation. There's so many people that can't participate at this level, even if it is an open invitation. There's way too many people, important voices that can't be contributing at the moment. But Ku'ule and I have been working on how we're going to keep that engagement going. So Mahalo for everybody's input. We are looking at these very important parts and preparing to move forward with it.
Awesome. Mahalo, Piha. Yeah, I think as we go through the presentation, we'll be able to see the spreadsheet that Tiff put together. So, and that's going to be helpful as we engage. So, I think right now it's 9:22, and originally we intended just to be here together with each other for an hour and 15 minutes. So if anyone has to excuse yourself from this part of the meeting, no worries, and please do come back for the to the recording. Otherwise, we're going to continue until around 10. So we're going to do another 40 minutes or so of trying to get aligned on these things. I think it's safe to say, just as we've done last week, with deciding as a group on the best the best proposal to move forward with. For example, we decided that the revenue model would be most likely the best model, and then we took that information out into our relations and got some feedback about that to bring to today. And so we'll do the same thing and bring those perspectives to next week, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
I would love, do you mind if I
yeah.
jump in for 1 second? I just wanted to add a question that I would love for people to add when they discuss this with friends and family. One of the things we've definitely heard in talking with folks about this is, as much as people don't want to or can't pay a really odd $2, $4, $6 deposit, the idea of, okay, let's say I've checked something out with my credit card or with my token, and then I lose it, or then all of a sudden that does feel like a big deal. Like, oh, now I'm out $4, I'm paying this penalty, and that could just make people decide not to participate at all in the system. And so I completely understand that feeling. So I think that it means there's the feedback that I think would be really interesting to get is, what is the range? Like, what is the dollar amount that people would feel comfortable knowing was at stake in borrowing a cup, knowing that, sometimes we lose things, and it can't be the end of the world if we lose this, that we would certainly hope that it would get returned by someone else with their redemption value. But by borrowing a cup, you're agreeing that you're responsible to pay this amount if you don't return it. And we don't want that to become a problem for people. Like, it would be really unfortunate if that was a financial problem. And it also would be really unfortunate if people did not choose to participate because it felt too high. So the trade-off, and I think it's worth just saying this out loud, is that if the amount that people are willing to have on the line is 50 cents or $1, the type of item that can be provided in that context is going to be very different than what you can provide for $2 or $3. So it might mean you're limited to a very basic sort of plastic cup, for example. So I would love to hear the community's input on how does the community want to balance those two considerations? Having a nicer item that feels really nice to use, but that if you lose it, you're going to be disappointed and have to pay a few dollars, versus paying a lot less, but having maybe the reuse system not be as appealing. It's a tension in the design that I wanted to speak to explicitly so that we can talk about it and get even more feedback on it.
Mm-hmm.
I see Marcia's raised her hand. Marcia.
Could you please type that into the chat, that question, and make it, this is what I would like to do before the next meeting. I would like to send this question out to my contacts and see what the response is.
Awesome.
What is the dollar amount that folks would be comfortable placing on the line for a reusable system? Let's see, how do I do that? Could someone put that into the chat box? It's easier for me. Thanks so much.
That folks would be comfortable placing on the line for reusable foodware for the ability to participate.
It's the replacement value is basically what we're asking for.
Mm-hmm. Right, because if, as long as you return it, it's free. And I think that's what's so appealing about the model is that most of the time it's free. But if you lose it, if it falls out of your bag, if it rolls under the seat of your car and you don't find it for 2 years, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia.
Mahalo, and we love that. Thank you. And I hope that you have my cell phone number so that you can call me as you are doing these outreaches, if you need some guidance. And did you have my cell number?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'll email you.
It'll
I
be
think I have
fine.
your email
It'll be
address.
fine.
Okay,
Just check.
awesome.
Thank you.
We'll just keep in touch and I'll be available to you in
Oh,
any
that's
capacity.
very kind of you. Yeah.
Mahalo
Good,
for your
good.
willingness to engage your relations.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's be in alignment about the non-return fee model, and that is allowing for a hybrid version that people who don't have access to a credit card can also do. We have quite a few more things to cover, so I'm hoping to move on. But Jen, do you have any thoughts?
Just a quick thing is that my concern is like, how do we track people, right? Like if they don't have a credit card, maybe they don't have a phone, maybe they don't have an email, maybe they can't keep track of their token card, maybe they don't have EBT. It's just, it's a tracking problem to me. How do we track them in this system? And maybe there are already known workarounds, but I just can imagine it's a tracking problem with like unhoused and maybe even other people. So I don't know. That's just, I'm just throwing that out. Maybe it's not a problem. Maybe like majority of people have phones, or most of the unhoused have EBT. Like, so I guess that's a question like for Tiff to get an idea of like what percentage of this population we might have a tracking problem. And that's
Jennifer, what is the purpose of the tracking that you're speaking to? Because we don't, one of the things that's nice about the non-return fee model is that you, and we're going to talk about technology in a little bit, but you, there are options where the items are tracked, but the people are not tracked. So I'm not sure if it matters that we know who has which item, unless the purpose is to be able to remind them to bring it back. But if you're using a token model, we don't need to know the name of the person with the cup. We just need to know that that token is attached to that cup. And we're not trying to track people. We're just trying to track items, if that makes sense.
okay. That does make sense. That works.
Well, I think one thing with Jen's concern is that I think with the whole tracking idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we are able to work with the Hope Services, the Salvation Armies, the people, the community organizations that work with this population, they can help facilitate the engagement. Because although they're unhoused, not all of them have the mental health issues, or addiction issues. Everybody is out there that might need, in that population, might need a different level of support to engage in this process. So this is where I'm hoping when we're talking to different social services, the partnership or the engagement would be different than when we're talking to somebody as a business or community association. But to get that population involved, we're going to need support for them to help facilitate usage for that population. So those are all things that Kule and I have on the table, and mahalo for bringing that up. But yeah, it's part of the discussion. Thank you.
Return fee model. Wow.
Kule, while you're typing, maybe we can hear from Ellen. She has her hand raised.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it goes to the question that Councilwoman Jen was asking. That question, I think it's misleading the way it's worded. So I would hesitate to add it the way it is. Because it makes it sound like in order to participate now, you'll have to have some money, and what's the dollar amount. But what we're trying to do
So-
is, right, so the way it's worded though, it's not clear. So it needs
Is
to be reworded.
can you suggest a way to reword that?
Well, again, this is for the replacement value. Right?
Right. So I don't,
Okay. I
I'm a
know,
little,
so the way it's worded makes it sound like in order to participate, what's the minimum or what's the maximum amount of money you would be willing to pay to participate in the system? I
Julie, I'm
just think
happy
it
to-
needs,
I can put another version of that question in the chat. If that's helpful.
thank you.
Yep.
Auntie Marcia, I think right now we're looking mostly at plates and cups, not utensils.
Okay, great, thanks. Glad you
Yes,
brought that up, Ellen. Thank you.
yes, mahalo. So I think Ellie will go ahead and put a reworded question into the chat for us to use as we move forward in our engagement.
Before Autumn adds it, because she's already adding it.
Oh, she's putting it to the virtual survey. Yeah. Don't worry. We'll make sure the right question is there.
Okay. Awesome. Mahalo. So that's the incentive model that's determined at the time of the checkout. Now, there are additional incentives, which can take the form of a like a positive thing or also a penalty type of incentive. So it's just incentivizing folks to return the fees, return the reusables. And there are a few things to consider here. So the return time frame is the amount of time consumers are allowed to keep the reusable item before returning it. That's something that we have to consider in this line of thought. A late fee is when consumers are charged a fee for returning the reusable after the allotted time. So this again incentivizes their compliance with the system and their engagement with the system. The redemption value is anyone returning a checked out item to a redemption center is paid 15 cents. And then there are non-financial rewards and incentives also, where consumers are rewarded with non-financial incentives that encourage participation and return of the reusable. So I think the first thing we need to discuss is what is a reasonable amount of time that consumers should be expected to or allowed to keep the reusable item before returning it. I think Perpetual's perspective is about 7 days. Does anyone have any principled objections to going ahead with a 7-day return time frame?
And Kulia, maybe it's worth just saying out loud that this is one of the areas where I think what people responded in the feedback was very aligned with this. That this proposal is aligned with what the community asked for.
So what happens if it's after 7 days?
I think that's what we might be talking about here in this next.
Yeah.
So if the reusable item is not returned within the return time frame, there's a late fee. I mean, we didn't establish one, but there could be a late fee. And there also could just be that they are charged the amount if they don't return it in the 7 days. But we haven't really decided on that yet. But I think the first thing to consider would be this like return time frame. How long in essence when you consider the like a person forgetting all together about that one dish that they grabbed, I think it's 7 days seems reasonable to me. I might suggest 8 days because 7 is like, okay, if I bought this on Sunday night, when do I have only until Sunday morning to return it, or is that still late? Or whereas 8 days is like definitely I can return it by Monday. It's like just clearer. But I mean, I don't think that's a significant suggestion. But anyway, does anyone have any principled objections to the 7-day time frame?
Actually, I do. Well, I'm just trying this out in my own life. If I go somewhere and if I'm not sitting there to eat, and is it conceivable this could be used for takeout?
Yes.
Okay, then I might take it home. And I live in Volcano, and I don't go back to Hilo weekly. I mean, maybe a month. It takes me a month,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, I have the option of just keeping that, but if yeah, I mean, that's not what I would want to do.
What if we had return bins in Volcano?
Well, heck, sure, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
okay.
I mean, the thing is, that's the thing. Can you
Mhm.
have bins, somewhere where the business or where you're getting the foodware from?
Mhm, mhm.
I mean, that gets, I don't know, that's a whole different, level too. Where do you,
Mhm.
And
yeah,
that will be an upcoming meeting, is a
Yeah.
proposed map of the collection points for people to provide feedback on. Mhm.
I think what she's bringing up is really important though, because, it's almost like the community is gonna have to learn, this is gonna be a new behavior that people's gonna have to learn. And so maybe to start off, we might wanna do more than 10 days and work down to meeting that expectation of within 7 days, people are just, it's a thing we do now. But I think 7 days might be a little short time for a brand new you know, change like this. The system alone is going to be a big thing for the community, and then to have a time frame to be fair, yeah, with the different areas. I mean, even Hilo alone is a big place. But just the fact that people are going to be changing behaviors and to give fair time for that, that might be, I think that's a really good point to have us consider.
I've got to say something because Tiffany, you are really hitting this on the nail. The recycle systems for decades, okay, discussions into recent times. One of the principles we talk about is how do you change or how do you educate people so their behavior, and we are. This is a huge, big new behavior we are proposing. I'm sure you are aware of it. And I appreciate so much that we are here to discuss all these little, every single point of it. But I'm very passionate about this to the point because I'm sure I'm not the only one in the group here, and they're not here, but those who have grown up with the recycling, even if it's just, beverage, I mean, you see how long it took just to get the law for beverage containers and then for people to actually do it. So yes, the person, the Mr. Comment or whatever, yes, real life. I have been, and I'm sure you have too, seen what people, how do they behave when they're asked to, first of all, I mean, if you're looking at how to reduce, reuse, and then recycle, and there is a continuum and a long-term learning curve we are facing. And so that's why I go back to so for me as an educator and a learner, how do I see it? I look through it, I step back from this and I say, how do we relate it to something that is already a learned behavior? So one of them is, that's why I go back to the beverage containers, because that is one that people are now, I feel, are more ma'atu. It took, and it's still taking time, but let's say we've had recycling education. Now we are entering reuse education, and from kupuna to keiki. So you have to look at how convenient is it going to be. It's not just the financial part, it's the logistics, it's the social part. Who's going to be doing it? How long, how far do they go? And it's sort of, what does the body naturally do that? Oh, you're giving me this. Oh, what do I do with this? Oh, and I'm going to have to take it there. Oh, and use what? And this is this, and token and script and all, it's like a whole different language as well. So the more that you can align that with something that they are already know about, familiar with, that's going to be very key. That's just my mana'o. So I can feel myself getting really very it's very emotional for me. So anyway,
I
that's
feel
it
really
for now.
empowered by your mana'o, auntie, because we're just shifting. And in a lot of ways, it seems like new behavior because of the return piece. But this is, you're right to say that reuse education is necessary for the sustainability of these types of behaviors in forever to come, so that forever and ever we can reduce our rubbish. So just mahalo for your mana'o.
Oh, and
We
just one more thing, Ku'ule, to support what Marcia is saying and all the work that you already have done. This is how we feel, Ku'ule and I feel, that we can be, a critical piece is to that concept of re-indigenizing these behaviors is going to be big. So the Hawaiian community is not, this is not new. So our job is to align these concepts with very old ways of doing things. And so that's kind of the tricky part, but we're working on it. And mahalo nui, Marcia, for everything that you're contributing to this conversation, because it is very important. But I also see that there's other hands up, and I'm sorry for just jumping in here.
It's okay. I'm concerned because we only have 15 more minutes and there's quite a bit more that we are meant to discuss, but I think there's a way we can work through that in some way. But Jen, do you have any principled objections to moving forward with the 7-day? Do you have any thoughts?
No, I do. Just on your point of time, and we haven't discussed everything. This is a huge topic. I think this is the make or break the system functioning if we can't get. So I think it warrants, like, maybe even you and Tiff do your engagement and then have a full meeting on this topic with additional discussion, because it's a big topic and I think it warrants a lot of discussion. I just wanted to, before there was a lot of other discussion, I think the collection piece is key. Like, that is what makes it hard for people to participate in Hawaii County in our waste management systems, is our collection systems are inadequate. And Marcia brings the point of, like, we already know people in Keau and Volcano and Kurdistan, all both ways are going to buy food and take it home. And so we either need to have some kind of exemption for people with special circumstances to not have to return their containers within a certain time interval, or have an incentive for people to return them quickly that maybe do live in Hilo, or maybe both of those things. You get points if you return in the first 3 days or in the first whatever, because there was a lot of discussion around loyalty point programs at the Opili Aina. A lot of people, like the Star, I think, was one of them. I'm not involved with any of those, but people were excited about that idea. So I think we need to figure out because it may not be feasible. Like, I wonder, like, is it worth the time and energy to drive to Volcano to get the containers for maybe if only people are going once a month and take their takeout home and then they go back to Hilo a month later, might not be worth it. It might be better to have that container just stay there until they can come back or till they can go to. So it's just we need to really think about the collection system in this broader context of we have all, you know, Puna that is, and Hamakua Coast people probably too are coming in. So we have to consider for that in the design of the return time frame.
Thank you. I noted it there, but we need to consider that. Autumn?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to share like part of a discussion that I had had with Dagny previously about the return time frames, and I worry about starting with one return time frame and then switching to a shorter one, just thinking about it potentially creating confusion for people who are participating in the program. But Dagny had shared with me previously that they were somewhat lax with the return time frame and the penalty, like not charging the penalty fee earlier on if people weren't returning. But then like over time, as the program evolves and people are used to it, maybe then implementing it. But
Autumn, is what I just want to make sure, just to amplify what you're saying, you could have a 7-day return time, but you don't get charged until 14 days, for example, or you don't, right, where there's an allowance. We tell people to return things within 7 days, but there's a grace period, maybe is the way to think about it, before they're sort of really considered as being late. That's how my library handles things. They have a very long grace period, which I often take advantage of, but I'll be better with cups, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Doesn't take as long to read them.
I like the grace period idea. TC?
Not knowing what the system of checkout's going to be yet, this might be a very hard question to answer or just to consider. But maybe some of this could be handled through collecting a zip code, you know, when you're checking this out. And the zip code is tied to a checkout time period. You know, that there's an automatic, you know, difference between a Volcano checkout or Honoka'a checkout time period versus downtown Hilo or Keao or something. And it's also tied to where the collection bins end up being, because at least in my mind, from being a very logistics oriented person, I would think, you know, it's not feasible to have collection bins basically anywhere we could conceive of somebody having the ability to have a takeout container go to from this system, because of the constant logistics of trying to visit and pick those things up. So there's a compromise between getting the number of pickup locations scattered around versus the number of containers you might have to have in the system, because some of them aren't coming back for, say, a month or 3 weeks. So it's that balance between trying to figure out how to reconcile those logistics and the costs. And so having a different time period based on your zip code may actually be a fairly cheap way to incentivize the people who would be further away to still use the reusable foodware system without penalizing them, and also making the system so much more expensive to handle in the long term. So just a thought. The fallback from what I'm hearing might be just the enforcement of such things on a sliding scale for the time period, might also do the same thing. We could also think about having whoever the service provider is for the containers might have a way to get a call from somebody and say, I live in Honoka'a, I'm not returning this for, a month. And they're not penalized for that until, the time period lapses. Anyway, just spitballing some ideas to throw on the wall.
Mahalo. I'm adding these here. I think we need to figure out what we're gonna do because we don't have enough time to get through what we were meant to get through today. And I feel like as a facilitator, I'm sorry about that, but it's necessary for me to get all of our input and not just rush through things because we have to get done. So I think what I'm gonna do, Ellen, I saw your hand up. I just want to take a second to share what we were originally meant to get through today so that we have some idea of what we're meant to cover. And I know that everyone did the pre-reading materials and maybe knew that this is some of the stuff that we're supposed to talk about, but I still just want to go over it really quickly because we just have a little over 5 minutes left of our time together today. So but Ellen, did you have a thought that you wanted me to add to this board here?
No, sorry. I was just thinking the cleanliness of an item, if it's a month later. Anyway, that just kind of stuck in my mind. We don't want it with caked on food coming back. But that's just a side note.
Awesome. I added it in. Mahalo. So we further along in the plan of what we're meant to discuss today is this redemption value and probably that process, but also these non-financial rewards and incentives. So I really like the idea of some kind of I suggested this last time, but if a person returns or successfully participates in the program a certain amount of times, maybe they have access to an educational curriculum, like one video or one module of a course on a place in Hawaii, or one module of a course on how to introduce yourself in Hawaiian. And in order to access that type of reward, you need to successfully participate in the program. There's also like Hawaiian Miles rewards, there's all of those different kinds of non-financial rewards and incentives that we can consider. The perpetual perspective is that we go ahead with the 7-day return time frame, no late fee, and 15-cent redemption value. So I know this is not something that we'll be able to agree on or be aligned on today because we didn't have that much time to really go through the other options. So we need to figure out where we're gonna land on that. But also we're meant to look at this technology piece. So the sign up to reuse system is where consumers go through a sign up process and then they're able to use the system. And a tap to reuse function works by allowing customers to check out the asset when they use their credit card to pay, either as part of the same payment processing platforms such as Stripe. There can be a supporting optional app that people can sign up for to get reminders, metrics, and rewards. So there are two different technology options there that relate to the checkout system. And we have some insights there. But I think Ellie, do you have some kind of guidance on where we might be able to land today and what we might be able to do until we meet again?
I think it works well I think we can use maybe 1 or 2 minutes now if people have any clarifying questions, but I think taking a week to get some additional feedback and give people time to think is helpful. And read the materials in the pre-read packet as well. We don't want to get too far behind in our design process, but this is the purpose of the process also, is to get the feedback and figure out what the right thing is. So we don't want to rush you know, if that means we're not actually doing the thing we need to do. So yeah, I think my recommendation would be for everyone to take a week to think, talk to people, talk to restaurants, you know, think this through and come ready to share and, you know, hopefully get aligned in time to also cover other topics next week if we can.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for working with me today on these models. I, as a facilitator, in a way, I feel like I failed because I wasn't able to get through all of the intended materials by the time. But I think that also means that I wasn't willing to cut anybody off as they were sharing really important considerations. So as a Oiwi person, as a Native person, I recognize that it wasn't really a failure, and it was a decision that I made to make sure that all voices were heard today. So it's really good work to, in my capacity as an Indigenous professional, it's big work, but necessary work to bring together the importance of timeliness and staying on track with also the ability to honor community through that way. So if I made anyone feel uncomfortable today in our work, I ask that you forgive me and just work with me, continue to work with me as we do better for the wellness of Pu'uanahulu and our community. So just thank you, and let's stay in touch. I'm thankful for the comments in the chat, and I'm grateful to review some of the things that we are going to talk about next week when we regather again next week. You can keep an eye out for the follow-up email, which will have some notes in it about how to engage with community in the upcoming week before we see each other again on February 8th. I wanted to share the spreadsheet that Tiff made. So I'm going to do that just briefly before we go, and I'm going to share that link here because I think if we all work together, it'll be really great for us. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to do this one. So the homework is to read the materials on the scope and the reusable assets, talk story with your friends and family about the reading, and ask which models they like best. But I think what we're going to do is wait for that, the shortened version of the question, and maybe we can ask our families about that. Please continue to invite your family to these meetings, your friends and family, so that their perspectives can be reflected as well, and or ask them their mana'o and bring it to these meetings as a representative for your ohana. There's the reuse survey that's still going around, and we're meant to gather a list of your favorite food and beverage places and send to me. So Yuko, mahalo, I got your list. I don't think I was able, my screen's not being shared. Sorry.
We're seeing the homework slide, just not in slideshow mode. We're seeing it in slide mode. So we're seeing the homework slide.
Okay. And then I hope that we can all work together on this spreadsheet. So mahalo again, ku'uwahi kua, for putting together this spreadsheet. If you can see it, it's listed by category.
Can you show? We can't see the spreadsheet right now. Can you share your screen with the spreadsheet? We're just seeing a slide.
How about this?
Yes, there we go.
Okay. So there's this category here, this category column. Then there's the food establishment, their contact number. This column is for who their boss is, who their organizational representative or their lead, who the decision-making person is. This column is for the team member that initiated contact. That's what IC means. And then the rest is just the address and email address of the organization. And then the date of the initial contact goes here, and the notes of the contact also goes here. So if anybody is willing to update any portion of this engagement log, it would be wonderful, whether that's just coming on here and updating phone numbers, or finding out this other information, or even calling them to invite them to the system design team process. This is like a version of passing out a flyer, but via cold calls. So I'm going to put the link in the chat, and also the follow-up email, so that anyone who is available 5 minutes, 10 minutes to work toward this this work, we can do that together. So I'm going to put that in the chat now. And then again, we'll just look forward to the follow-up email. Jen, I think let's see. I think Tiff took that information from the email that you sent, and I think it's here. Can you verify that these are the places that you're talking about, that your folks went to? I think maybe that's okay. Awesome. Yeah. So some of it's been input here. But so the link to that is in the chat, and it'll also be in the follow-up email that I'll work with Autumn on to get out by Monday. And I think that's all. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Just mahalo everyone for our work today, and I look forward to seeing you folks again next week. I can be reached at the information in our follow-up emails as they've come. But yeah, anyone have any questions? Anyone at all before we adjourn? Thank you for the encouragement in the comments. I appreciate you.
Good job, everyone.
Thanks. Good job.
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Okay. Dagny, hi and bye. And aloha, everyone. I'll see you folks next week.
Okay.
Aloha,
Bye.
mahalo.
Aloha.
Mahalo.